During this session, we will be covering approval policies. Approval policies allow users to apply one or multiple electronic signatures to a master record or calibration as a way to verify that the appropriate people have seen the record before its approval or finalization. To create a new approval policy, first select Approval Policy from the list menu. This option provides you with access to the approval policies screen for the current company. Here, you can create approval policies that may be applied to item master records within the software. Once the approval policy setup screen is open, click the Add New Record button. In the policy field name, enter a name for the approval policy. Next, you will select the Add Signature button to create the first signature required for the policy. The signature meaning field is used to enter the name of the signature as it will appear on the Approvals tab of the records to which it is applied. You must then determine which users are able to sign for that signature. To do this, click the Manage Groups button at the end of the row. As you can see, a user's ability to sign for a signature is dependent upon the level of access granted to them by the user group to which they belong. All user groups entered into the database will be listed in the Available User Groups box. Technician groups, however, are not listed. To move a user group to the Groups Allowed to Sign box, simply highlight it and click the right arrow button. To move user groups back to the Available User Groups box, use the left arrow button. After you have made your selections, you will select the Apply Changes button. You will then be returned to the main screen where the user group selected will appear in the User Groups Permitted to Sign field. Keep in mind that allowing one or more user groups to sign for a signature means that all members of those user groups will have access to sign for that signature on the records the approval policy is applied to. To change the position of the policy's signatures, use the Move Signature Up and Move Signature Down buttons. To remove a signature from the policy completely, select it in the grid and click the Remove Signature button. When all signatures for the policy have been created, you may then use the checkboxes in the screen's header to apply other settings. First, the Active Policy box ensures that this approval policy is available for use wherever approval policies can be applied. For an approval policy that is no longer in use, you would uncheck this box so that the policy's name would not be available for application to any records. Next is the For Signing Sequence box. Selecting this option means that the signatures on the policy will have to be signed in the order in which they appear on the screen. When the signing sequence is forced on a policy, the order in which they appear in the approval policy screen is imperative, and therefore the Move Signature Up and Move Signature Down buttons may be especially useful in this situation. If you decide to leave this box unmarked, then the signatures on the policy may be assigned in any order. Last is the Apply Final Approval when last signature is affixed box. Selecting this option means that when the last signature of the approval policy has been signed and the record is saved, the Records Approved By or Finalized box will automatically be marked and updated with the correct information regarding the approver's name, the date, and time the last signature on the policy was signed. Once active approval policies have been created and saved, they will be available for selection throughout the software. Let's apply an approval policy to a master instrument record. When a master record has an approval policy applied to it, the originator of the policy must first sign the originator checkbox. Once this checkbox has been marked and the record has been saved, the signatures required by the approval policy will become active in accordance with the setup of the policy. At this point, all other users with the ability to sign will have the ability to do so. Let's complete this approval policy. As you can see, the record was approved after the last signature was applied and the record was saved. Signatures may be rerouted back to the originator if an approver places a checkmark in the rejected box of the signature that they are responsible for. If an approver rejects the changes made, they will have the opportunity to enter a note that gets appended to the record, so the originator may see why the record was rejected. If this occurs, the approval policy is reinitiated. This requires the originator's changes complete box to be marked again before the policy signatures can once again be signed. If an individual besides the originator of the modification makes another modification to the record, an additional changes complete box will appear on the record's approvals tab. This changes complete box will be labeled as reviser. The reviser at this time must place a check mark in the changes complete box and save the record, which then reroutes the record back to the approval policy. As I said before, the calibration approval policy is applied to all calibration records associated with the asset. Let's take a look at how that works. After a calibration record has been entered, you can navigate to its Approvals tab to see the approval policy that's been applied to it through the master instrument record. The approval policy here will function in the same way it did on the master instrument record, that being in accordance with the setup of the policy. Let's complete this policy. Once again, after the final signature has been applied and the record is saved, the calibration is also finalized. There is one other way to apply an approval policy to a record, and that's through the Department Setup screen. Within this screen, there are two fields you can use to apply an item approval policy and/or a calibration approval policy. All active approval policies entered for the current company will be available on both fields. Selecting a policy in either one of these fields will enforce the application of those approval policies on the record that the department is associated with. In this instance, the only way to remove an approval policy from a record will be to either disassociate the policies from the department or disassociate the department from the master record. And that's all there is to it. Now you can create and use approval policies in ProCalV5.